Wu-Sabat, Musa, Wu-Sabat. Okay, we are back, and today we're doing our on common ground. We're doing on common ground discussions, interview. We have a brother that's gonna come on today and build with us, share with us. Excuse me. We're gonna have a vibrant discussion about the culture, about economics. We're going to talk about reparations and see where this gets us. And this is our second episode that we are having this discussion. Very important discussion, guys. These discussions, I think, is going to get us to a level of how do we really get boots on the ground to solve our problems? You know, how do we really get our people active, motivated? And so these discussions is about trying to build with brothers and sisters to find common ground to the solutions of what we're dealing with. And so that's what we're going to be doing each week, every Wednesday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're going to have these discussions with different brothers and sisters who want to have this, this talk about how do we work to solve the challenges that we're dealing with as a people. How do we find common ground depending on, irregardless of the different So, 1 2 1 2. Mic check. 1 2 1 2. Mic check. Mic check. Am I good, family? Muisar, am I good with the mic? Yeah, I'll do it again. Am I good, Muisar, with the sound? You guys hear me now? Something also with my video. Okay, why way? Why way? Okay, what about the video? Because I'm looking at my screen here on my other computer. Is my video? Can you guys see me? Is can is my video okay? Press 1 if my video, if you guys can see my screen and see me. Let me know if you guys can see. Oh, you can? Yeah. Okay. That's what's up, family. Okay. That's what's up. You guys can see. Excellent. All right. All right. So that's what's up. That's what's up. Well, we're still waiting for our guest, but let me get back to my intro. Let me get back to my intro because I guess our intro is all muddled up, but that's okay. We're gonna start again. All right. So now, for those who do not know me, my name is Peti Sina Teptu Re'e, and I've been over a 30-year student teacher of the profound doctrine of the master teacher, known to us as Padabab Yunanan, also known as Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who has been teaching us our ancient culture. We identify as Wu-Sabat, also known as Wu-Nawab, which stands for those who make decisions based on sound right reasonability, based on the principles of Ma'at, based on the wisdom of the Hutwi. In essence, our culture was about being in harmony with natural nature. As an African people, we lived in harmony with natural nature. And unfortunately, we've gotten away from our original culture. We've gotten away from originally how we used to do things. This is how we used to live prior to 6,000 years ago. I know it's a long time, but we are an ancient people. And gradually, our culture began to wane and wane and wane until about 500 years ago, when we've been under attack by way of racism, white supremacy, which has been ruling the planet ever since. And we have been suffering under this ever since. And we argue that the only way we can get from away from this suffering is if we begin to correct how we choose to make decisions. We begin to correct how we live. And that solution is Wu-Sabat, the culture of Wu-Sabat, because you find yourself, if you in a bad situation, is due to bad decisions. And in order to change your bad situation, that means you have to change your decisions. And this is what we've been dedicated to. The master teacher, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, has been trying to educate us about our culture for the last 60 years. And I'm just one of many student teachers all over the globe who has dedicated themselves to trying our best to educate our people about our culture, you know, and it's not easy, but we have to do it. And so we come out here and we do question and answer classes, and we try our best to educate people about who we are, what we are, and why we do what we do. You know, but we constantly allow ourselves to be questioned so we can explain, because we're arguing, we're the ones with the solution. We're the ones with the answers to the problems that we're dealing with as a people. You know, and so with all that being said, you know, sit back, relax, and enjoy our discussion today, and let's see where it takes us. But also, before we get started, we also like to do a prayer. Always open it up with our rituals. Our culture is about spiritual development, and so doing a doing our prayer system is extremely important. We do it in our language, what we call Lahaj, which is Sabaic, and then I translate it to English. So those who can see it on the screen, you guys can follow me, and we'll go from there. So let's get started. Bade Kalau Namasat Wufad ko Aman Kasamun Shalala Put Pa Sawa Wu Pa Tara Panen Safa Kawun Pa Sawa Wu Pa Tara Z Kawuna Nazula Laha Enkum Maneh Sabat Wu-Sabat Ameh Hadayan Shafei Maneh Salafu Wu-Nataru Aju Laye Nafasu Kum Afuk Shane Kawun Kuma Pa Sawa Wu Pa Tara. This book is the truth and the way. It was sent down for you all from Sabat Wu-Sabat, star constellation, as a guidance and a healing. From your ancestors and overseers, return to your own. Accept what is yours, the truth and the way. Anun tawa ankum lehe panan shafei unwu alaj. Anun tawa ankum lehe nasuinun. Anun tawa ankum lehe ashuk. Ankum ata salafunun. Anun ata kharat ukum. Anum talub nasar kuma. Anum talub nasar kuma. And so nun sayim nataro. And so nun salafunun. Anun ata munwapu. We thank you all for this healing and cure. We thank you all for not forgetting us. We thank you all for Ashuk. You are our ancestors. We are your children. We seek your help. We seek your help. Help us, divine overseers. Help us, our ancestors. We are Musba'u. Anun. Atun. Atun. Amun. Jennifer. Okay. Let's see. All right. Okay, we're still waiting for our guest to show up. Okay, we're waiting for our guest to show up. Here he is. Okay. All right. Robert, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I think I can see you.
Wonderful. Ajedmu. Wonderful. And you can hear me?
Oh yeah, clear, crystal clear.
Ajedmu. Okay. All right. Welcome. Musa. We have the family in the chat, so I'm sure they welcome you also.
Well, bad Moisar.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you have the ability to show up. You're here with the Nupu crew, and it's wonderful, to have you come check us out. And
yeah,
this is great. I think this discussion is necessary. These discussions in general are necessary, and we're excited to do these things. And so I like to set up our discussion. I have on here. I don't know. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, wonderful. Ajumu, wonderful. Now, I like to set up and go over like the parameters of what our goals here with these interviews and discussions, and then we can kind of get right into it. So let me go through my little syllabus, and then we'll get into our discussion. Okay. All right. So here we go. So this is a news show about interviewing Black people who are leaders and or proactive in their respective fields of vocation. Our goal is to find common ground where Black people worldwide can find ways to work together for the economic, social, and political benefits of Black people. We argue that for the past 500 years, Black people worldwide have been under attack by the Western world, who have pushed their agenda of racism, white supremacy. Now, define racism, white supremacy. This is a social, economic, political, religious, educational, scientific, global construct created by powerful white men for the benefit of the white race that has first enslaved and or colonized African peoples for a set of clear objectives. And what are those objectives? Objective number one: slavery creates poverty for the enslaved and wealth for the enslaver. Two, slavery transfers power from the enslaved to the enslaver. And three, the enslaver used their power to subjugate the enslaved to their cultural ideals. The creator of a culture is the ruler of that culture, who is also the beneficiary of that culture. And four, the enslaver for the past 500 years has used their ill-gotten power and wealth gained from the enslaved and colonized victims and their descendants to increase their wealth, power, and cultural dominance perpetually. Five, we live in a world today where white culture dominates the world, and white people develop military, political, and economic power to maintain their cultural global dominance in their minds perpetually. And six, the goal of this racist agenda is perpetual cultural dominance, where the racists maintain their control by being the ones who creates the laws, rules, and regulations with their open door policy for other races to conform to their dominant white culture or be labeled a cult, terrorist, authoritarian, criminal, isolationist, or any other negative label that the dominant white media and their advocates can use against you to assassinate your character. We here at Nubu.org, who are Sabians by race and culture, reject racism, white supremacy in all its forms and its deceptive ways that it tries to present itself. We totally agree with the thesis statements of Dr. Joy DeGory, Nully Fuller, Dr. Claude Anderson, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Umar Johnson, and many more, who all have addressed these issues in their unique ways as scholars within the Black community. We, as Sabians, do acknowledge the actual facts of the three primary races of Earth and all the mixed ethnic peoples that resulted from the three primary races, which are the first world people, Africans, second, the Asians, and third, the Caucasians. This fact of nature also teaches us that culture is a genetic reality and that all races on Earth have a natural nature right to live by without interference of foreigners. We argue if we as Black people around the world are going to deal with global racism, white supremacy, then it is best that Black people find common ground to assist each other in this fight. We argue that we must create cultural agreements to find common ground to deal with an adversary that is affecting all of our lives. As they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We believe that love and unity is the solution. But until then, let's find common ground to work on. We believe that the common ground to work on for Black people worldwide is a global reparations agenda to address the 500-year perpetual harm that the white race continued to execute against Black people. Because of the global elites, aka white men, world domination goals, we continue to suffer worldwide and we demand change. We demand the white race to stop their attacks against us, and we demand that the white race repair the harms they have committed against the Black race for the past 500 years, starting with our cultural freedom. Okay, with all that being said, that sets the stage for our discussion. And I like to do that because I want to put in the minds of the people that we talk to, where we're coming from, so that they can, one, relate to us and to see where we either where we find common ground, where we agree or disagree, which is okay. But the goal is you don't have to agree on everything, but hopefully we'll agree on some things. And then those things we do agree on, we can work on, and we can build our relationships around that. And that's, kind of where our discussion is. So with all that being said, you have a basis for what our vision is here. So now let's get the business and talk to you, our good brother, Kufu. Question. So our first question of the day is for you to talk to our audience to tell us, who are you that you want the world to know? What is your cultural ideals and principles that you adhere to? So I repeat, who are you that you want the world to know? And what is your cultural ideals and principles that you adhere to?
Well, first of all, I appreciate Tawatak for inviting me on the show to build on these much needed discussions as a Mursar, as a family, that we may give, like you said earlier, have more common ground to what are some of our challenges. And as we get into it, it will, you know, given a more perspective, the more of these type of discussions are had, then we will be able to see a lot of things that sometimes people miss because we can get caught up into the the energy of it all,
Right.
and then of course going back to the basics. But who am I? I identify as a Sabian first and foremost. Um, as we walk amongst the world, being taught by the master teacher, Dr. Malachi Z. York, also known as Baba Yananan, um, that representation is critical. It is critical, whether people realize it or not. Is very critical in this sense that we represent a profound idea, a profound culture, and as well as principles that we live by. Wu-Sabat,
Okay.
um, by way of Patarak, and the actual facts and other teachings that Baba Yanana has given us. So that is a very huge and crucial aspect when dealing with each of us individually as we walk amongst the world, how we will be seen, how will we be perceived. So many of these things can vary. It depends on how we, of course, treat each other and how we interact with other societies, other organizations. It's very critical when we start to go into it. So that is the first and foremost, as we identify with ourselves as Sabians, moving amongst the populace and the world over. Uh, that idea and that persona should be seen and heard as we move about.
Okay, that's wonderful. All right, so that leads us to our second question,
Mhm.
which is, who is Dr. York to you, and when did you become a student of Dr. York, and why?
Well, of course, every one of us, we've come from different walks of lives, different backgrounds, different locations around the globe. Um, I came in contact with the information in Louisiana and New Orleans, as well as Baton Rouge down there back in the '90s, early, I say like '94
Wow.
in that era. Yeah, and of course, come across the information through brothers and sisters who were, um, putting the information out, having it available. And again, that was something that for me, that journey and seeking uh, the truth, the real truth, no matter, these were my criteria. It didn't matter if it was upsetting. It didn't matter if we found out that I found out that, okay, all of this is all this is lies. I didn't care what the truth was as long as it was the truth. So that was my criteria as I seeked and I started to come across these brothers and sisters with this information, with this doctrine, all the way back then. So what I was looking for was not only that truth, but that being that eventually we knew this truth would come through. Uh, so once you have that in mind, then of course you're gonna start seeking. Obviously, you want to read everything. You want to put your hands on everything. You want to read it. You want to study it. But as soon as I came across the scrolls and the books back then, I knew something right off, and of course, start hearing the audios from the 80s up to the early 90s of Baba Yanana teaching. I knew it was something different about him, like hands down, like it was something different. And this before I knew he was very fluent in multiple languages. Just the way he explained things with so much clarity meant a lot, to me, So, and a lot of leaders, although they did their parts, uh, Bobby Yanana, he really went beneath the grain, and start digging up some those questions that people don't ask. So as that started to come about, then of course you get more and more, understanding of who is he and how he can affect the lives of not just me, but many, many, many more Black people worldwide, world over. So, um, so of course, why is the truth? Of course, seeking the truth, and he's our not only the man of the hour, but he's the being that nature has sent to us in order to rid ourselves of not only white supremacy, racism, but most of the problems that we face as Nagaru people would be eliminated, literally. So yeah, it gets deep into that.
So that leads us to say, how do you feel that the culture that Dr. York taught you should be taught, or do you feel, do you feel that the culture that Dr. York taught you should be taught to Black people in general? And then why would you say that? And the next part would be, how would this culture benefit Black people? So if it was taught to them, if you feel it should be taught to us,
Mhm.
Black people around the world, then what is the benefits of people learning the culture of Wu-Sabat?
Well, that's the first and foremost thing, is that Wu-Sabat is a culture. It's a way of doing things that was literally stripped out of the Black minds over the past 500 years, as you mentioned earlier. That mentality was stripped. That includes our language, that includes our land, that includes our way of life. Literally, no matter what it was at that time, that part of it was stripped from us. So the benefit right off is that it will rekindle and resurrect our culture. That means how we actually do things, how we actually move about from day to day, what the things, the priorities that are on our mind, the priorities for ourselves, for our family, for our extended family, you know, and the children. I mean, all of this goes into the benefits, eliminating, of course, the ignorance that has been placed upon the Black family over 500 years. So when you start getting into that, you will definitely see that Wu-Sabat is, it has literally answered everything. Literally, like, not just why racism exists, but why the Caucasian and other races have been affected by this ignorance that has basically uh, 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 filled the planet with most of the hate that we see today.
Right.
And the cause of it, the root cause of it. So Wu-Sabat is definitely is the answer for that. As people start to read more, they start to ask more questions. Once you get the questions going, then that's going to literally get you on that path to start answering those tough questions that people really don't know the answer of, but Wu-Sabat answers.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, with that being said, uh, what is your view of the Sabaean nation for the past 20 years that Dr. York has been kidnapped?
Um, you know what? Not only as the nation, I can also speak for myself.
Hmm.
But as far as the nation is concerned, I can say right off the first thing that pops in my head is pain. You know, uh, the pain of 20 years without the master teacher in our presence. If anybody tells me that they don't feel pain or they don't feel some type of discomfort, then I would question their reason for being a Sabian, first of all. So that pain at the same time can be offset by pleasure. And this what I mean by pleasure is the pleasure of knowing that there is an opportunity. There is a way to remove that pain. Baba has mentioned not only recently, but for many, many, many years about us uniting as a family, as a nation. And only way to do that is through love, not just ordinary love, not just love just to say love, but we're talking about divine love. That means understanding our true nature as Nagaru people, that we personify this action that they call love or ashuk, which is a much higher, much more broader perspective on how we should treat each other, how we should deal with each other, and how to rid our mindset of the negative mentalities that we have faced for over the past 500 years. So that pain can be offset. A lot of people are still struggling with that pain and frustration, but because of Wu-Sabat and what Baba has brought to us in the hereafter doctrine, which is to remove and eliminate the deepest part of us. That's why he mentions that the journey is within,
Right.
because the deepest part of our real issues is inside. It's internal. It's through the 30 spirits, it's through genetic kiss. Now he's explaining these intricate things that we didn't have any knowledge before. So now, not only who to mix with or why you shouldn't mix with them, and this is what happened when you do mix with this particular person or mentality, as well as the 30 spirits that we all have. So it's nothing like, okay, I have it, but the next person don't have it. No, we all have ancestry, we all have genetics, we all have a genealogy. So once that starts to get addressed by way of the affirmation, the actual facts, the pataraks, and this knowledge that Baba has given us while being kidnapped, it gives you, like I mentioned before, like a second wind. It gives you like, it's almost like it's a resurrecting energy that you will start to feel, but you can't be lazy with it. You have to work it. It doesn't have to work you. It's like, because if you don't read it, then guess what? You're not going to see the benefits of it. You're not going to see how to come out of that pain that a lot of us deal with. And I don't care what kind of pain it is, financial pains, mental, emotional, physical. There's an answer within Wu-Sabat. There's an answer for those pains and discomforts. So that's the first thing. I can see dealing with the nation is a lot of pain, and with each other, with shows like this, it can help begin to heal a lot of pains that people are going through by simply speaking it out, getting more people on and discussing, certain topics and things, that way they can get it out, as well as give some advice, some sort of guidance of what maybe got them out of it, so.
How do you feel about the people who've left within those 20 years? Do you have an opinion about that? And because you have some who left, they didn't just leave, but they also slandered the organization. Do you have an opinion on those who leave and those who leave and slander?
Well, I think I remember Baba mentioning one time before, and that anyone that has some type of distaste for Wu-Sabat, and they not only leave but start, taking it further to either slander or try to discredit. Um, Baba mentioned that they were never with us in the beginning. They were never Nawapians in the beginning. They were never Sabians internally, because it's something from the inside out. That's why it's a genetic doctrine. If it does not agree with your genetics, or something in your genetics that rejects, and to the point where you can't control it, and you succumb to those type of negative uh, uh, internal issues that most people may sway towards, that's what's going to overtake most people if they're not strong enough. That's why, reading, studying, looking for that solution that Wu-Sabat offers is going to be the key to a lot of these issues. But again, if it's genetically doesn't agree with that individual, and that individual gets taken over by the negative narrative that's been put out, then Baba said, like, they were not going to be able to withstand the winds anyway. They would not be able to withstand the storms anyway. So,
Well,
we
let me
said,
ask you this: do you
Mhm.
think there's something could have been done? Or are we saying that it is out of our touch? They're just genetically just opposed to this culture, really, because you
Mhm.
have some people who've been in it for decades, a couple of
Right.
decades, right? And then they just leave. Do you feel, is there something could have been done about that? Is there something we could have done as an organization, or is it really just out of our hands?
Again, Baba was and is the best example at that time, and now that best example of how to put your life on the line, and how to sacrifice for not only your family, but a whole nation and worldwide, uh, the nation worldwide. And it's, again, you can bring the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. You know what I mean? So those type of hard, tough love things that you provide the answers that people need, but I mean, what more can you do, in essence? Like, people may disagree with this part of the doctrine, they may disagree with that part, but at the end of the day, does it change the narrative that we've been scorned with for the past 500 years? And obviously, Wu-Sabat changes that narrative. So those that just basically they could not hang on, they were just it was too much for them. Again, it's genetics, because at the end of the day, it's like, you're reading or you're studying out of the comfort of your own homes. Like, okay, well, who's actually bothering you? Did anyone do anything to you personally, to make you feel like, we're in the business of lying to a bunch of people about what our stand is, and why this information is so prolific. That's why Bob always say, don't believe me, check it out. You know,
I
so.
guess, yeah. I guess my question is coming from, if you take, let's take this country, America, right? And then let's take an African country where you'll hear about people migrating out of an African country because they didn't like the conditions. But then you'll hear the United States. You don't really hear too much about a migration coming out of the United States, even though you have a lot of disgruntled Americans. They still stay. versus other
Mhm.
people in other nations, they leave their nation. Uh, does anything have, when you look at those two dynamics, does any of that have to do, in your opinion now, when you look
Mhm.
at our nation, is there anything we can learn from that as Sabians?
You mean nations that are fleeing from America? Well, nations that are coming here or leaving
No,
America?
people. No, I'm saying people. Let's say you hear about people who live in certain African countries, and they leave their country because of conditions.
Yes.
Because I don't know if you heard about those people that was they do some dangerous things, man. They say they cross the Sahara Desert, they get into Libya, and they take
Mhm.
these boats from Libya to and try to get to Europe, because Europe has been complaining that there's an influx of Africans leaving their nations, right? Now and then you have America. You don't hear that in America. You don't hear about Americans who may be disgruntled, but they're not leaving America in droves. In fact, look at, another prime example is Mexico. They've been complaining about the issue of Mexico on the border for years now, and tons of people from Mexico and other South American countries are trying to cross the borders here. So the question becomes, they leaving their conditions and they want to go somewhere better, as opposed to America now. You have a lot of Americans who are disgruntled, but they're not leaving.
Right.
So, is there something in that, in your opinion, and looking at that dynamic for us as Sabians? When we talk about people leaving our organization, I liken that to the Mexicans. They leave for whatever reason. They don't like the situation. Now, of course, I understand that the response you said was genetics. you know
Right.
is there something else? Is there
No,
also a broader way of looking at this?
no, this is gonna be funny, but it's to kind of capture the net to the capture the image of what you're saying is going to be very important for people to wrap their brains around this, because this is what has happened and the history shows that this is what has happened. And I'm going to go specifically not all the way back to the America's inception, but I'll go back to at least a speech that John F. Kennedy made, is about when they was trying to get to the moon, the whole so-called moon project. He made a statement, I'm paraphrasing. It's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Yeah.
So the sense of self empowering is spoken through the highest levels of government in within establishing America's quote unquote freedoms and liberties. So that has been established over a period of time, not just, of course, when John F. Kennedy was here moving around, but that has been the narrative that has been spoken throughout the world. The big and the best, so all these things, which is really self-esteem, it's like didn't matter if other countries were better in other areas. America had that way of creating a self-esteem propaganda program that has gotten the average American, typically European descent, to ride off of those liberties that have been pushed and that have been spoken about, even though they were done and taken off the backs of course, Afafre Kau Africans, as well as the the natives that was already here. The indigenous tribes that were already here. They used all of them. It's not just one over the other. They've used everybody's uh, will. They used everybody's labor. Any and everybody was up for grabs, and that includes the time of the not only the Cold War, but like World War I and II. When you start going into that history and how the German scientists were acquired that came to the Americas to work for the government, to work with NASA, that became that military industrial complex that has, disintegrated the mentality world over, uh, and that wasn't on the backs of just what you would call natural born Americans. It was other nations that they've gravitated them to America in order to have um, that ability of influence. And that's in every area. Now, media, politics, the judicial system, it's always someone else's ideology at the that they've brought together to create this idea that America is at the top, even though they're not. It's the perception that they were able to do through media, through the cinematography, through magazines, that propaganda. And a lot of people don't realize how effective that was. It was hugely effective. So it created a self pride. It's a feeling of privilege and self pride. That's why when you deal with the Olympics, if you anybody could just research it, 9 times out of 10, Americans were winning more Olympic gold medals than any other country. Does that mean they were better? No, it didn't mean that. That means that edge, they only need an edge. Once you get that edge over another country, it could just be that inferiority that other countries have of America can throw off an opponent. It can throw off a rivalry of another country's sports uh, uh, sports field and things of that nature. So it, as a nation of people, going back to your question, uh, Wu-Sabat or Sabian or Wu-Sabat as a nation, Sabians as a nation, that they should have a sense of self-pride. You know why? Because finally we can say we have answers. Finally we can say who we are. Finally we can say we have a language. You follow? So, and
No,
finally
yeah.
we can find land. So that's not even a problem either. We can find land and we can settle, we can start making our exodus in a lot of different ways. But that, again, that self-pride has to be there. Without that, you have nothing.
I guess, my line of questioning comes from also a discussion today I had with my daughter and talking about, the culture and stuff like that. And she basically said to me, well, she has a problem telling people that she's an Awapian, Sabian, was raised like that because she was born and raised in it. And she has a problem because of all the negativity that we have been dealing with. If you type in Dr. York's name, the negativity, and she doesn't know how to effectively address that. How to,
Right.
because I told her, I welcome those things because it gives me an opportunity to address it. It gives me an opportunity to set the record straight. But
Right.
obviously she doesn't study like me, so she doesn't have the skill set to do that, so she rather avoid those types of questions and challenges. And so I pose this question to you. Do you have a take on it? I mean, she's only, what is she, 23? She'll be 24 this year, so she's 23 years old. So I don't know how other Sabians who have children in this age bracket, how they're dealing with, or other Sabians in this age bracket, how they're dealing with it. But do you have any advice for her? Advice for any Sabians who may feel uncomfortable, you
I
know?
will say this. I will say this as an advice. You have to change the narrative. You have to, so those images, we know they're put out by European who didn't want us on the land first and foremost. So you have to understand it from a historical aspect. This is nothing new that they kidnap our leaders and not only torture, but at sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times even kill. So you have to have a historical perspective given to our youth so they'll know that that's not the end of it. You follow? That's not the end of it. That narrative has to stay what it is. We we are the ones that have to change the narrative. Shows like this, the youth starting to put shows together making it a demand that this affirmation is what it is, and not only what it is, but the benefits. I can say how it benefits me all day, but I just can't be the only one saying it. All of us have to say it. All of us have to start pushing it out there from here to Timbuktu if we have to, because that way that will change the narrative. And I'm going to tell you what's interesting about that, because it's basically our own propaganda of truth in the positive, though. Not just saying something because we want to sway the world and the minds of people. No, we're saying something because it is the truth. You follow? Now, use this as an example. I mentioned World War I and II back in that time. Do you know what they were saying to about Nagaro people back in those war times back in Europe, in France, in Germany, and all over Europe? What they was telling in Asia, what they were telling these people about black people. I mean, that was a serious propaganda that people still listen to, they've still been affected by. But you know why? Because Dracula has bitten them on the neck, to that way they can have the same ideology as the same being that has given the bite. You see, so that propaganda is real. It is serious. All you have to do is create the narrative that a people is nothing, that they're worthless, they don't have any historical landmark, they don't have any historical stand in life. And I'm like, what about all the stuff we invented? Why nobody talks about that? What about all our inventions? What about all of the civilizations that we've created? What about all of the countries that we've helped? So that's what's weird. A lot of people don't know, during the I think it was a French Revolution, or one of the wars that France were in, you had a lot of brothers from Senegal that spoke French. That a lot of Africans went over there and fought on the side of the French, because parts of Africa was colonized by the French. So a lot of brothers went over there fighting for France at some point. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about, we obviously in the wars that relate to America, so it's like we just have to change the narrative. So more teachings has to happen, and that goes for our young people. They also have to get involved. You know why? Because it doesn't go away. It just doesn't vanish by magic. That's not real. That's spookism. You as the god, a gadad, our feminine as a gadad tat goddesses, they also have to be a part of that narrative changing. Matter of fact, the females could make it happen even that much quicker. And people like to laugh about this, but the females, they talk more than we do. So imagine this energy starts to ferment amongst the feminine, our feminine, and it starts to become the new thing, not the nonsense, of course, that's been laid in front of us for so many years to eat up in the social media, coming out with the next movie or documentary trying to disgrace our nation in some way, shape, or form. We just got to change the narrative. Shows like this will do it, and more shows like this is even helping more as we reach out into the Caribbeans as well as Africa and Europe with the message of Wu-Sabat.
Well, that brings us to our next question. What is your view on the Sabaean nation working with other Black groups or nations toward the goals of liberation?
That is definitely not something new. Bible has always talked about that. I'm not talking about years ago, recently, from years ago up to recently, always to try and what do you call it? Grab the hands of other nations as brothers and sisters, and try to combine that mentality of liberation, or the thought of liberation. It's not new, and that goes from the Nation of Islam, the Moorish nation, you name it. I mean, any nation out there that deals with our liberation as a people, uh, 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 it's always been encouraged Remember, Baba was asking questions to a lot of these nations, and writing books about the doctrine to pull them closer. A lot of people don't know that he was writing scrolls about different groups, whether it's the Nation of Islam, Moorish Science nations, uh, and to pull them closer to Wu-Sabat, to pull them closer to see, okay, what is the scale of these two doctrines, and how can they be combined at some point, and we will work that part of it out amongst each other, once we can start dialoguing. You had flags of the 5% nation on the land. You had the flag of the more science temple on the land, more science nation on the land. You had the flag of the Nation of Islam on the land, flying up there. If that wasn't an invitation for those nations to come together, come up there and see what was going on, so they too can become a part of that liberation, has always been encouraged.
I guess what's your take on a brother like Sarnetta? I know different brothers in the nation, they have varying views on Sarnetta. And obviously he's been out there engaging. He's engaged with us. He's engaged with the different groups out there. Uh, do you feel we got a good representation from him, or an adverse representation from what the brother is trying to do? And is there a way where we can go into those forums to I guess address some of our issues as a collective people, or should we discard someone like him? Uh, what do you think your take, being that he's become a voice in the so-called conscious community?
I mean, everybody, like you said, has a voice. They're going to speak their mind, what their thoughts are on different nations, and what type of results took place. And so he has a voice just like anybody else has a voice to basically speak on it. I think to solve any issues that we may have as a nation, it has to be within. If you're not in with us, then you're just on the sideline, refereeing, kind of coaching both sides. And a lot of times that doesn't work, because it's either right or it's not. It's either, you can't be a lot of time. And that's, again, media and things of that nature that some of these platforms are using could be questionable. So I think to have more discussions like this platform and what you're doing helps to address not only some of those issues that people may have come across, but uh, also address it from a Sabian perspective. Because it's different if you're not a Sabian, because you don't have no skin in the game. It's different. You can make all the opinions you want about what the nation is doing. Okay, well, go join the Nation of Islam and see if you can change it. But just to sit on the sideline and have someone dictate and point fingers, that's not going to go far, and it's going to eventually dwindle. And again, the nation will still be standing there dealing with the same issues that the nation has to deal with within itself. So those answers and narratives should be changed from within, not from without.
Okay. All
And the
right.
brothers, again, just people that have skin in the game. They represent themselves as a Sabian, so thus they have a responsibility. When you're not representing yourself as that, you don't have a responsibility. You can make any accusation, you can say anything, and it doesn't mean anything because you're on the outside looking in, just like anyone else that don't like what the Nation of Islam did. They don't like how Elijah Muhammad was doing things. A lot of people didn't like what Noble Drew Ali was doing. They don't like how he was doing it. And they don't like what Marcus Garvey was doing it, like W.E. Du Bois. A lot of people don't know this. He didn't like what Marcus Garvey was doing, and could quite have been part of the reason why Marcus Garvey had these charges to get him deported. So all of those kind of mentalities, they're everywhere. They're back from the 1900s up to now, even further back than that, that are just naysayers, as you will, if you will. naysayers. Oh, I think this, I think that, but they don't come with no solutions because you know why? They don't care. They don't have any skin in the game because they're not a part of it. They're just on the outside looking in. That's it.
All right. Well, what is your views on racism, white supremacy, and what we have to say about it? How do you view it? How would you teach it? How would you explain it? How would you attack it?
What Wu-Sabat does is, you see, the ideology that we can say the Caucasian is, let's say, the devil, right? Due to his wickedness, due to the things that they have done on the planet, the things that they have done to people, uh, other nationalities, but first and foremost to Nagaru black people, world over, which creates that propaganda as well as mentality of hate. Okay, so now how do we find out how to get around this thing or how to go through it if need be? First of all, we have to know that we've been affected by it, first of all, because you can't fight something you can't see. So you have to bring the ghost, bring the ghost out of that little lair, bring the vampire out of the lair and bring him to you and look like, okay, I know who you are. You see? Before it's like, oh, I'm not sure. Everybody else have done the same. No, 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 no. When you start going into the deeper views and the deeper realities that white supremacy has done on the planet from a Wu-Sabat perspective, because in the doctrine, Baba has tons of scrolls and information concerning not only who these beings are and where does this hate come from, and then how to get rid of it, how to remove it out of our lives. And one of the main reasons is how to do that. You have to give them everything back. You have to start systematically removing yourself from every single ideology that they have ever forced upon us. And it was forced. And I mean by gunpoint, by torture, it was forced upon us and well as other nations. That ideology was forced upon other nations as well. But it
Now,
was
let me just interject right there. That you said a very important point is get them out of our lives. But the whole essence of racism, white supremacy is that it's everywhere. It's the media, it's the educational system, it's the economic system, and people feel overwhelmed and they're at a loss, which is why we need a master teacher to come explain how to address it. But as you know, we've been fighting it for 60 years. And
60,
unfortunately,
yeah.
the unfortunate end result, they kidnapped the master teacher because we've been fighting it. And so how do you address that kind of question? Someone coming at you like that it's just so massive that they have our children brainwashed. They got our women blonde in their hair. They got our men, marrying white women, and we succumb to their culture on every level. And we teach as Sabians, we're the ones with the solution to the problem. And people want a solution. But, I don't think they feel we've given a solution. Or maybe I'm wrong. I mean, what do you have to say? Being that I'm arguing this problem is massive on all levels. I've had this debate. I've told you many times with my dad, and he says we're going to have to wait another 400 years,
Right, right.
and so what's your take?
Well, I'll say this just to show some different points in it. Farrakhan had a million man march. He had a million black uh, souls marching, going to Washington to hear a speech about the issues of Black America, right? And he used that platform to do exactly what was done. Marcus Garvey had these, as well as a platform that uh, the Africans belong in Africa. So now His whole idea was that we should leave America to go back to our homeland to what? Sort out our problems. Elijah Muhammad also mentioned the same thing, the same message. Do for self. We are divine beings. We should be in control of our own destiny as gods and goddesses. And these are the things that have been riddled throughout the community, throughout our communities worldwide. So, yes, the devastation of this six ether negative mind force has very well affected millions, if not billions, of melanated people on the planet. Anybody could say different. I like to see at I like to see the opposite of that. Everybody was affected world over. Now the key is this: our movements, our, what do you call it, rising out of the ashes, if you will, never started with a whole vast majority of people. It was always a small group, always the pioneers, those who started to move away gradually from the so-called helm of white supremacy. And that goes as well from leaving America, creating more of an economic advantage. All of these advantages we started to create. So now we say, okay, now we know that we have the ability to create an economic system. Anybody says we're able to be in every aspect of economics in America. We've held almost every position to know how to deal with our own economic issues. We've held almost every religious position, and we've seen what that has done. What hasn't been done is that Wu-Sabat hasn't become the narrative. And the only way we become the narrative is that we explain, and we start putting this out in every nook and cranny in the world so people will know that it exists, because most people don't know it exists. They don't know the benefits of it, like the question earlier. They don't see the benefits of it. The youth don't really see it, because as this information started to assimilate into our brains, now something starts to happen. We start to get activated. A lot of people don't know this. So that means the ideas will start coming to you, different things to work together, your inspiration for this channel. All of these things start happening now over time, So and you could say about other Zamal and Zamaltat family that start to feel that regenerative energy, which includes putting ourselves out there, teaching and explaining, because no one can really refute what is being taught. Now they can come up with something some white person said, or some Kakashi may have mentioned in some book written in the 1800s. It still is not going to be, still won't be older than the hieroglyphics in the pyramids. It still won't be older than our culture. No matter who they go and find a book, oh wow, look at this. This said the word all. All is ALL is just an English word. So Sabians didn't invent the word all. See, that wasn't even our word. So we obviously had a language predating English that spoke about these principles that the master Baba Yananan had to put in English so we can at least grasp it. Then we're going back into our language and how to speak it. That is the process. While doing that, we start to regenerate that mindset that, okay, this is mine, it belongs to me, and no one is going to take it away from me, and it starts to grow. And with that growth, that white supremacy starts to fade gradually. It will fade, and it won't be our main topic, if you will.
Now, if imagine the Sabian nation appoints you as the minister of economics, what would you do?
First of all, as the message mentioned so many years, sell to everybody else and buy from each other. You see, that's the first step. We have to start selling buying from each other and selling to everybody else. That's the first step. As long as there's fear that we can't interact with each other via business or commerce, that's our problem. That to show that we don't understand how important it is when you don't see it enough. You don't see enough Nagaru businesses. You don't see enough Sabian businesses because 9 times out of fear, not that it can't be done or it's not possible. It's fear. Fear is the fear of the unknown. Will I make enough money? Will it be enough? Well, everything has a what do you call it? Everything has a cycle. Everything has its ups and downs for as economics is concerned. But that would be the first step: taking care of our immediate things that we literally use on a day-to-day basis. Start buying from each other. Literally, that's where it starts. And then the big businesses and the big conglomerates, that will come later. But initially, we must start relying on one another for products and services. And that to me, it starts the economic engine. It's nothing new. Everybody's doing it. We just don't do it because we go and spend our monies and our dollars and our buying powers with everyone else except each other. Our buying power is about 1.7 trillion. 1.7 trillion. Anybody go look it up. The Nagaru black people in America only, we're talking about. Buying power is $1.7 trillion that are going outside of the community, going into other nations and nationality pockets, and they're not being used to rebuild our infrastructure, as well as establishing a culture that identifies with who we are. That's the bottom line. Simple and plain. That's why you have Chinatown, as we know. We have Little Italy. We have all these places that they're thriving. They're thriving because they stay sticky, and that's what yasar literally means, to be sticky. We're not sticky enough. People talk a good game, but they're not talking about how can I change the life of another Sabian? How can I help the life of another Sabian, male or female, children, elder? If you're not thinking like that, what are you talking about? You're just thinking about yourself. You're really going to be just talking about yourself. When we become responsible for each other, that's when it will change. That's when the economic engine will start changing, and it will start moving things in the right direction.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I posed this. Well, last week I did the same discussion with our good brother Pharaoh. We talked about the other brother named Khufu. He has your name. Who has the nation. He calls himself Emperor Khufu. I suppose you're familiar with the brother.
Yeah, I think I've came across very briefly on YouTube. Yeah, as well as when Pharaoh, I think he was building with the brother as well. So,
and I believe he says he has the solution to get the master teacher out, but there hasn't been any cooperation. I think he's saying from the nation. Do you have a take on any of that?
Real quick and briefly. From what was said about what the brother is able to do or can do and whatnot in terms of helping Baba dealing with Baba's freedom. Many of worldwide calls ago, at least 3 to 4 months ago, when this was a real big energy towards that area. It was said that the brother was supposed to get with a few of the individuals with the legal
Kufuenta Hudia Moon Ray A joined.
Something happened to our connection, guys. Something happened to our connection to our brother. Let's see.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, yeah. You got something happened to the connection.
yeah,
Uh, in answering that question with the brother, the Emperor
yeah.
Kuba.
And again, and the brother Pharaoh was helping. From what was said, that he was helping also the instrument being an instrument in that regard.
Right.
Now, and from what the legal team mentioned, that nothing really came to fruition, meaning the brother didn't come to the table. If that's true, that's between him and them. But I always had the stance of, if there's anything you can do, you personally, if that person personally could do anything, then do it. If you need a ton of people to do it, then say that. Say it's not just you going to do it, is you need this and how many X, Y, and Z people to do it, what you're trying to do for Baba. I don't think nobody would disagree with that. But if we're just talking and we want to, there's a big hype or a big energy behind it, great. But when it boils down to, can it be done? Can you do it? If not you, who else needs to be a part of doing it? And that should have been what it should have taken place, but maybe it wasn't. It didn't take place. And I always say again, if it's something that any individual can do, they should just be able to do it, and without a bunch of other, things behind it. So, because then, like, who doesn't want to cooperate with Baba's freedom? That again is going to be that person's that's going to be on that person's head and soul if they interfere with that. And that's anybody. It don't matter who they are. If you're interfering with Baba's freedom, and because of games or whatever the issues are, then that's going to be a problem that they're going to have to deal with. But don't have any other comment on that other than, yeah, if it's something the brother can do, then by all means, I'm familiar with a lot of the things that he was saying. I'm familiar with it, but I'm, again, if it can be done, and if it's something that is a strong, especially from all of these months that have passed. I mean, if it's something that really could happen and be done, nothing would stop me from doing it. Nothing. And nobody will stop me from being able to do it.
Okay. I mean, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, I know you're feeling about the continent Africa. How would you? What advice do you have on connecting with Africa? What would you say to Sabians? What would you say to Black people in general? Uh, you know, should we connect with Africa? If so, why? And what's some of your suggestions on that?
I mean, definitely we have to connect with Africa in some shape or form. Definitely, as well as the Caribbeans in some shape or form. Where large populations of Nagaru Black people are, we should have some kind of either uh, extended or interaction with them in order to get to know. And again, the internet, I mean, that's the biggest way to connect with Africa. A lot of people think you need to go there, go stay in the hut, eat
Mhm.
with the natives, and you think that's connecting with Africa. Hey, to each his own. Baba mentioned in the update that he will explain why people shouldn't just jump over into Africa, because
Mhm.
it is definitely not a place where you want to just jump from America, jump over there. And you can look up a lot of video content on YouTube with Nagadus who are already over there. I'm not particularly Sabian, but Nagadus, they're over there. They're sharing their story, the
Mhm.
challenges. And I think those shows and those type of things should be looked into, where people can see what people really go through over there, because of whatever the issues that are in play, especially as individuals. You go into Africa as an individual, you're not going to have enough. You're not going to know enough to know how to survive over there without either connecting with someone on the ground, or again, approaching it from a much larger group, like a tribal group aspect in dealing with Africa. Africa is not a easy task to just up and leave and just go there. It definitely has to be something gradual and have a lot of order involved. Because if not, you're going to have the same chaos. You're going to have the same issues that Africans are already dealing with over there. I've been there from from a few different countries. I know what it's like. I still think we should eventually be there. That's a given because of our connection there. But at the same time, not just jumping up there, going there, sitting down in the village somewhere, think you're going to go over there and get a job from any African country, like, I mean, any African company over there. It does not work that way. You have to find out, look into it, and there should be some, again, connection with Africa, and just in terms of learning about what goes on there. That is the biggest part of it. That could solve a lot of problems at the same
Right.
time. Learning about what goes on over there. Political landscapes are different depending on the country. Political landscapes are different. The stability of the country is different depending on which country you go to. So you got to do a lot of research, you know. And once you do that research, you'll be able to see and, of course, connect with people that are already over there. You go to their YouTube channels and they'll be able to explain this stuff to you.
Do you have any advice for someone who came into the doctrine within the last 19 years that the master has been gone, and how, you know, you feel they should approach it, being that they didn't have the luxury like yourself to be up under the master, learn directly from the master teacher? Do you feel any kind of way about individuals who come into our organization that did not have the same access?
I will say this: link or find any elder that is still a Sabian that has followed the master teacher up to the hereafter doctrine. Talk to these elders. They have tons and tons of knowledge and experiences to share. That's what Baba was mentioning on the Ma'at class that you were in. You saw, if you can remember, the class on the land. He mentions about the elders, those that were raised under him, to show those new people that are coming in, what they had to go through, what Baba had to go through. And that way they will have that foundation. That's how it always has been. Technically, we're supposed to learn from our elders. And because here in America, we didn't get that knowledge, that real knowledge from our elders. Why? Because our elders were in slavery. You see, our elders were kidnapped. So you didn't get that knowledge that we should have had. Now that there's been an intervention by way of the forces of nature to bring Baba to explain it all, to take us to the next step, because everybody was necessary. Prior to Baba coming on the scene, everybody was necessary, building up, if you will, to that true outformation that would be needed to for our transformation. And any new people connect with the elders. Obviously, reading is going to be extremely important. Try to get into groups of study groups. But the elders, that's going to be one of the most valuable, because they knew Baba personally. A lot of them knew him personally, most likely have met him personally. And that way you can you can get many different views of how Baba really is as a person, besides the knowledge, besides who he is as a literal person just walking beside and hearing him speak on things. You'll be able to get a real humbling feeling about how much he has given, and it's going to be hard if you're not around that kind of mentality and around those people, because a lot of people that maybe came after Baba's kidnapping, they will not have those stories unless they have spoken to someone, they have interacted with other family that have been around Baba. So I would definitely advise that as being one of the major ways to make that connection. And again, go to bookstores. You're going to find elders. They're going to be by the bookstores. They're on social media now, so you can connect. It really is no excuse why these new people that are coming aboard and really seeing what Wu-Sabat has to offer, not to be able to reach out. Because in only way to really know what's going on, you have to reach out to those who were there, and then you'll be able to get the rest through the scrolls and learn as well, much more than that.
Do you have any? What's your take on? Do you feel there's a difference on how brothers would approach this culture as opposed to our beloved sisters? And if you feel there's a difference for our sisters, do you have any say on that?
And how they approach, you mean newcomers? People that
Whether
are,
they even new for our sisters who actually been in it for a while, as well as those who are new. Just the female aspect of our organization. Do you have any take
oh,
on
well,
women?
yeah, yeah, without a doubt. And whether, again, whether sisters realize it that are already Sabians and those that are newcomers that are looking into, taking that step into Wu-Sabat, you must know this first and foremost, that Wu-Sabat is a feminine and a matriarch doctrine. What does that mean? A feminine and a matriarch doctrine. That means that everything goes back to the female. In nature, the principles of the feminine is in nature itself. As they say, Nut was the mother of Ra or Re, which is the primordial egg coming out of triple darkness, or the womb, as they say, or the black hole. That by itself manifests into the feminine or the female that give birth to all life on earth, literally. Not the nonsense that was taught by religions about woman coming from the rib of Adam and silliness like that. We should be past that point, although there's some family out there, a lot of Nagaru melanated people still hold true to that for whatever reason. We just haven't got to them yet. That's all. Or they haven't run across Wu-Sabat yet. But knowing that it should create a different narrative once again for the feminine, for the female, knowing that she would be in a place where she is upheld. This is the key to this, that she is upheld as a part of, not only a part of our lives as melanated men, but the lives of humanity, because she gave birth to humanity, literally, not figuratively.
Right.
So she has to grab hold of that. And again, like we mentioned earlier, start to have that, what do you call it, that self-esteem increase, because she's never really seen it before. Why? Because it's been hidden. It's been hidden in societies, secret societies. They've been hiding that fact that the Nagaru feminine is the mother of all life on earth and in the spiritual realm.
Right.
She's the mother of all existence. If you really go into it, she's the mother of all existence, which was our true way of life. We acknowledge that. We come from her. We are a part of her, obviously, because we have XY chromosome. And being that we respected her, any nation that respects their female typically flourishes. Now, anybody just do the research. Any nation that is typically flourishing is due to the female. And that is as they always say, the mother is the backbone of the family. I mean, many other things that we can say about that. So for the feminine and the masculine, that is going to be important. Why? Because once the mother is acknowledged, because she wasn't being acknowledged for so many years, that changes the whole landscape. Why? Because she becomes more selective. She becomes more what do you call it? She starts to explain more. She's able to remove literally the negative narrative that's been put out there by her transformation into her true identity of who and what she really is. And now, if as a Sabian you come into Wu-Sabat, then that's literally what we live by, literally, and it extends beyond that.
Uh, what's your take on how we teach the doctrine? Do you have any points of view on that? Any advice? Any perceptions on how brothers teach? Whether they teach like myself on YouTube, or now the brothers are teaching on Clubhouse,
Mhm.
as you can see it, and or whether they in the streets. Do you have any
Yeah.
take on how we teach our doctrine?
Because we all have some type of uniqueness about how we relay information, how we perceive the information. I think as long as the information is being put out, I think we can all perfect example, right? Everybody loved Jordan, right? But nobody can mention Jordan and don't say, man, Magic was decent. I mean, Magic was something too. Magic Johnson was something. And you could say that about many, now it's LeBron. It's like you can say that about they all unique and they all are good. They're excellent. You know what I mean? So it's like you can't make one and or the other the same. They all have their unique qualities. So that is the benefit of us as a people. We have uniqueness in many different forms, and so the style of teaching and the way it's delivered, I think if it stays to the narrative of the scrolls and what Baba is saying, it's gonna be spoken different ways. It's gonna be explained. Some people are very descriptive. Some people like illustrating things a lot. So it it really depends. They're all unique and amazing in their own way, just like the platform you have here. It's amazing. I mean, it's unique, and you have the ability to go on Clubhouse and teach more. So it's like
Mhm.
you're covering every aspect that could be covered. And again, you just need more of us doing it, more of us stretching out beyond the borders, beyond continents, and you could really see something amazing with those different styles come together. Because you know what, a person that you may be able to reach, I maybe weren't able to reach them. Another brother able to not reach, you would be able to reach them, and vice versa. So we have unique ways that the doctrine will flow through each individual teacher in a way that it's unique to them. You can't make somebody like somebody else. It just can't happen that way. Bring your uniqueness. We've all awakened many different ways in different times of our lives. So you can bring in experiences that people didn't have because they weren't there. They didn't have your experience about certain things. So I only applaud the teachers that are teaching, and again, we just need more of it, more, especially feminine. Getting the feminine teaching more on those different platforms is going to be even more amazing, because again, like I said, once the feminine set the tone, the narrative,
Right.
just imagine how many more feminines are going to be connecting. Thus the masculine will have to go up to the next level, because that mediocrity has to eventually fade once she steps up to her true position and her true uh, uh, image. Then of course the masculine won't be able to use those same tricks, so then he has to now elevate to the next level. Yeah, seriously.
What
You
would you
learn.
say? What would you say if a brother the more science simple was to come up to you and say they're the ones with the solution to our problems, not you Sabians. They got the solution, and we should be listening to them. How do you feel?
Well, we should be listening to each other at some point. That's the only way you're going to get anywhere, is to dialogue.
Mm.
The Morris Science Brothers, one of their huge big things is law. LAW. Anybody says that you don't need to learn law or know about law, they're lying, including Sabians. We do need to learn about law. We also taught it. That was a segment of one of the schools that Baba taught. And it is literally, whether people realize or not, it is within Wu-Sabat as well. But just learning law won't get you to freedom. You see, that's not the only means of freedom. is just learning law, knowing the laws, and you want to go back and forth with policemen on the street, that you're sovereign and all of this kind of stuff. You want to, okay, well, this is our country. Okay, this your country. Okay, get some land. We're going to set up this and that. Okay, and we've been there and done that as Sabians. We know what it's like to set up land, a land that we said is our own, Tamaray. We had our principles there. We it was open to the public, and the devil find a way to get in there. You see, by way of most of the time through black devils, unfortunately.
Right.
That was assisting in that. So just as much as the more science will say, well, yeah, this is, law is the order of the day, right? Nationality is the order of the day. Knowing your nationalities, X, Y, and Z. And that's great. It is important. But are we going to identify the nationality of here as the Americas, or are we going to identify our ancient roots and our ancient background with Tamaray, in ancient Egypt? Are we going to deal with Afafre Africa? Are we going to deal with our laws? Or are we going to deal with the laws that we were abiding by for thousands and thousands of years before the European even knew what law was? Because his laws are man-made. So I typically don't want to run around with a Black's Law dictionary everywhere I go when I'm trying to move about. It's going to be very difficult, because you find yourself in too many confrontations. We have to eliminate the confrontation. That way we can remove even having to interact with these different issues when we're trying to profess our liberties.
I noticed that's kind of how you've been answering the questions in a way that limits any kind of confrontation. Like you just said, I see that's how you're moving your discussion in that way. Do you have anything to say on that?
Absolutely. Anybody think you're gonna be sitting with the Kakasu toe to toe, rah 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 in it, and that, oh, we're gonna fight any kind of fighting aspect when we didn't learn a lot from our past? And that shows you that if we don't change uh, 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 our present, we will then. It's a quote about repeating our history. If you don't make a change, or as they say,
Those who don't learn from their past are doomed to repeat it.
there you go. Those that don't learn from their past are doomed to repeat it. How these different people gradually put themselves in organizations, how they infiltrate, how they're there for the wrong reasons, how they're there purposely, and for the sole purpose of undermining and to the undo the positive that these organizations were intended to be initially, and that includes the Black Panther, that includes the Nation of Islam, that includes the More Science, the Marcus Garvey movement as well, and many others. The same narrative is there. It's always a narrative of how do we undermine these nation of Black people who are becoming more aware of themselves.
Well, let me ask you
Yeah.
this: if you imagine yourself at a scenario like the Million Man March, and you was given an hour to speak to them, what's some of the things you felt should be said?
Um, I would say don't let this meetup be for naught. Don't let it be in vain. Let's do something with it. Let's go back to our cities. Let's go back to our towns and really start to work on each other. Start to help each other in business. Start to change the narrative that has been placed upon us worldwide. Um, you know, and with a message like that, I think, yes, it's beautiful. Yes, it's good that we've all met up and whatnot, but let's just not go and leave and go back home, go back to what we were doing. No, you got to start making those changes in every little city, every little town, and start really coming together and providing the services that we obviously need that we give to everybody else. So, and because they're able to come into the communities and do what they're doing, the main reason is why we don't work together. That is the main reason why a lot of the issues that are that are surfacing in our communities is because of that reason. We're not working together. We're not connecting. Thus, the infiltrations and these other things will start taking place. We have to get, like Elijah Muhammad always said, we need a place of our own. We need to start working out our own problems and issues together. That's how you eliminate the racism and eliminate the Caucasian involvement. Then that way we can just blame each other now. So once we remove that element, then okay, who do we blame next? Oh wow, well we blame so it's okay. So how do we fix the name blaming? How do we fix the blaming game? Studying your culture, identifying with your culture, and that will gradually make us more agreeable with each other, because there's a lot of disagreeableness inside of us that we can't seem to cohesively make that link. But through Wu-Sabat, that link is indefinite. It's inevitable. As long as you're still reading it and you're still studying it, it's going to be inevitable that you're going to be able to link with one another in the positive.
Right. What is your take on, how would you explain the spell of Leviathan if someone asks you what is this? You guys written like 6-7 books on the subject matter. You talk about it a lot. What is this thing, the spell of Leviathan?
I kid you not, what pops in my mind literally is when Baba said out of his own mouth, is a spell of self-hate. Spell of self-hate. That means you not only do you hate yourself, but you hate people that look like you. And that is ignorance. To actually hate yourself, you can't even move forward. You can't even become anything in life if you hate yourself. You can't. And much less than that, you won't be able to connect with others to what you're going to need in order to be successful. You need to have those other links with each other. So if you hate yourself and you hate your brother, your sister, that's going to create a hard life, whether people realize this point or not. It's going to prevent you from being successful. Now, people should just go back and do the knowledge, go back and find out how how these type of success stories happen. We don't like it, but just look at how Madam C. Walker became a millionaire, the first Black millionaire. Well, she sold Black products to women who wanted to straighten their hair. So guess what? She made millions of dollars based on that product.
Okay,
So
do you think that was a good or bad thing?
it could be bad if it's done in the negative, because at that time, as we were becoming more industrialized, because mind you now, the country was being industrialized, coming into the industrial age during that time, which means we were a part of that industrial age as well. Invention of the lights, invention of the stop, what do you call it, the stop signs. So we were a part of it.
So you're saying if you were back there, you wouldn't have no problem with her selling our women things to straighten their hair?
No. I mean, as a feminine can only answer that part of it, because that I wouldn't be able to identify with it because I'm a masculine. So that would be a different question to ask a feminine, quite
Interesting.
honestly.
So you would bow out of that discussion as
Yeah,
a
yeah,
man.
I think some things like a feminine could not relate to because they're not masculine. That's unfortunate. I mean, they won't be able to relate to. They won't be able to relate. They won't be able to relate to it because they're not suffering from those particular things. Although they feel that pain for us as feminine,
Mm-hmm.
they can only feel it to a certain extent because they're not in it. They're not doing it. What identity that pushed Madam C. Walker and those like her to create products that to start changing our image? I mean, of course, that is not the greatest thing, but in the terms of economics, in terms of economics, it had a huge effect that we needed to rely on each other to have that economic freedom and empowerment. It's gonna take, so the example is that we're gonna need each other to empower us economically. How to go about it, obviously there's other things that were sold that we don't want to even consider wasn't anything great. There's many things that were sold to us from our own people that wasn't great. But in terms of economics, as we get into Wu-Sabat, those views start to change. It's like, wow, I can't just be selling product. Okay, well, there's natural hair now. Okay, so I can sell products that deal with natural hair. So that's changing the narrative, or evolving the narrative from what Madam C. Walker was doing to now, let's say we're going to change, we're going to push natural products. We're going to push the natural products for the feminine so their hair could be more naturally kept versus, either straightening or putting some type of perm or anything like that in it. That would be isolated. That would be eliminated. So that's one way to eliminate it in this day and time, that the products can be more natural, gearing more to letting your natural hair grow the way it should in this day and time. But I
Okay,
was
so
using that point.
right, you're saying that because they were in a timeline where they didn't have another option, like our women today have another option, like the natural hair. Although most of our women get braids and stuff like that in their head, but they have an option of being natural. You're saying that because the sisters really didn't understand being natural back then, then that makes more sense. Okay, Madam C. Walker, she came up with a great idea to make money and promote.
Yes. Yes. Why? Because we're ever changing. That's the only thing that's constant is change. Will it stay forever? No. Did it start off that way? No. But what it does say, that the self-image, which was your initial question about the spell of Leviathan. The
Right.
spell of Leviathan was cast upon the Nagaru race 6,000 years ago. So it's been a period of timelines where that spell becomes worse, 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 and worse. So this pops up in a Nagaru brain, in their thoughts and ideas. Wow, I'm nothing. I'm this and I'm that. So that spell was very strong during that time, especially just coming out of slavery, so-called emancipating the slaves, and then all of these ideas started popping up. So I guess one thing that any Nagaru didn't want to do is look like a slave, I guess. So that would be the opposite mindset, right? So we got to look like the opposite of what slaves look like. Okay. So now that's the spell. That's the initial aspect of the self-hate image. So then you start hating your image from your black skin, from your natural kinky hair, and you start hating that image. Thus the bleaching creams are created. Thus the perms and the byproducts that kill the hair follicles are created, to the point now you have most Nagaru feminine, they don't even wear the hair natural, but they wear wigs, of course, a lot of wigs, and of course we know extensions and stuff like that. So those things will gradually change because the spell is a real living thing. That spell of Leviathan it's real and it's alive. As much people want to, as much as everybody want to avoid it. Oh no, I decided to do my hair like, no, you didn't. That's you're genetically predisposed to thinking that you want your hair to look like that, or you want your you want to change the way you look. All of that starts to affect the genetics, which the master teacher mentions in 30 spirits, as well as genetic kiss. It starts to change our genetics very slightly and gradually through time, where we start thinking a way that we don't even realize we're thinking opposite of our natural nature.
How do you reconcile our teachings of genetic kiss and 30 spirits about spirit being possession? How do you reconcile that with the doctrines of the Nation of Islam and the Hebrew Israelites and the Moorish Science Temple? How do you reconcile our doctrine and what we're teaching our people compared to the other doctrines out there?
I'll say this much, that Baba has taken it layers and layers deeper than what the nation has taught, which is a very simple doctrine and is very powerful at the same time. It's simple, but yet it was very powerful to start the narrative that you are the original man, the Asiatic black man, as we know how the lessons speak on it, and the Caucasian, rather, he is the adversity or the adverse force in your existence, which AKA the devil, which is what the word adversity the word the devil means, to be adverse. So what Wu-Sabat has done is gone deeper than just the skin. Baba has went into the genetics, into the genome of why the Kakasu is the way he is. That now you understand it, and why we are the way we are. You see, because a lot of people, Baba's the only one that spoke about black devils. Are there black devils? Now, how do you explain that to Nation Islam? They never taught that they were black devils. They were only taught, they would call them spies and traitors and stuff like that, but they never coined the term black devil. Baba, the only person that I've ever heard mention the word mention the phrase "are there black devils."
Right.
So with that, that is the first difference, that the way Wu-Sabat teaches a very intricate way of understanding not only our genetics, but the genetics of the whole world, and how those genetics have been compromised. Our genetics have been compromised, as well as everybody else's genetics. And everybody's been affected in some way, shape, or form. So that means that it's not just, oh, if I'm going to deal with a Kakasu, they're my only enemy. So you can't think like that. Okay, so what if the Kakasu infiltrates the Dravidians? What if they start to invade their mind space and started telling them things about black, which is what happened, as well as the Mangalu, the Asians. That's exactly what happened. Look at what has been created. All of the aggression that we as Nagaru people have faced from other nations that we've never interacted with on any level, because we were primarily here in the States. So when we start making migrations to Europe and these other countries, it's like the Kakasu already did their damage. They've already went there, and how that works is it's almost like we weren't there for that memo when they were starting to tell these nations about black people in whatever way, shape, or form. I'm like, wow, you done enslaved the people, you done kidnapped them, took them from their country. But yet these ignorant people believe, you see how deep the spell is? So they believe that you, who are the oppressors of even their nation, will tell them the truth about black people. Isn't that ignorant? That's why the spell was also put upon the Mangalu or the Asians. You know, trying to get them to be in the image of the Kakasu as well. Everybody's image has been altered, and that's been the biggest issue that we have to face. But by way of Wu-Sabat, we can remove that image. We can remove that narrative. That is very much so needed.
And we're about to close up, but in closing, there's one question I wanted to address, what your opinion on. We teach that we have a timeline, a pickup timeline from 2003 to 2030, and we're in the year 2022 right now.
Right.
And so we're 8 years out, 7 years out from that the closure of that timeline. Do you have a take on that?
I will say this, and this is for any Sabian who reads Wu-Sabat, who reads Alphamation, who reads the actual facts and follows Ba'a Yananan, that what we are looking to happen, right, and how it would happen, if we can put ourselves in the mindset of as if it already happened, meaning you can't wait. As an example, you can't wait to get to risk to be a riskian. You We all know that that can't happen. You just can't appear there. You just can't pop
Mhm.
up there. There's something we have to do here. There's something we have to do now. So it's almost like your mind, like in dimensional shift, Baba really goes into it, has to link with risk. You have to link with the Nathar, which Baba is our Nathar in the flesh. We're supposed to link with because he's the Nabab door to risk, whether people realize that or not. And you cannot hide from the Nathar. That's what people don't understand a lot of times. Meaning, you can't pretend to be one of their children. You have to be their children. You can't sit on the sideline like we were saying earlier and point the finger. No, you have to be a part of the solution to the problems. We can't be on the sideline because these are deities now. So if they're deities and they're providers of affirmation, they're provider of guidance and many other things that we can't even imagine, guess what we have to be? We have to be that same provider of affirmation, the same provider of guidance and protection by way of Panatharu. So now they protect us, we connect with them, and we now help others. We help to protect others and connect. So we become the Nathar in the flesh by way of that transformation through what Baba Yanana mentions. I gave you information to inform you and affirmation to transform you.
Mhm.
It's not that like when you read in Secrets of the Marquisette and say, oh yeah, we're transforming, you're floating around in space. Nobody's doing that. You're not going to be able to do that. That's an etheric possibility.
Mhm.
What does that mean when I say that? Let's just say, and I'm gonna say this real quick by way of the affirmation that we've been given over the years, for many years, like the crafts, the sham, they're gonna pick us, they're gonna take us into another dimension, right? I'm just using this as an example. Well,
Mhm.
first of all, to even be summoned by a craft, to know where a craft would be, to know how to communicate with a craft, even if there's grays on it, or whoever Baba says will be designated on those crafts to come and assist in our pickup, right? So, without a doubt, you have to be at a certain level before you even summon, before you even see that white light, before you even start to get communications about it, or just from Baba's own mouth. This is where they're going to be. This is the time, which as we know, he knows that and we don't. So, but the key is to be prepared. What Wu-Sabat is doing is preparing you mentally, spiritually, and physically to be on a craft that will go into not only outer space, but will be crushed down to energy in order to go through a black hole to get to another dimension. That's not like now. Can our mind link with another dimension? Yes, obviously. You can link with these dimensions because Baba said we can, without a doubt. The feminine brain moves at a 26 billion uh, miles per moment, and our brain as masculine moves at 24 billion miles per moment. So that proves that we can mentally link by way of the chants, the prayers, and our lifestyle with our Nathar beyond space time, beyond this time zone that we're trapped in, right? And Baba has opened that door for us to link with him. Why? Because he's the source of that affirmation that we've been given, that guide on how to go about linking. Nobody has ever taught us about that. The Nation of Islam, all due respect to the more science, nobody's talked about how you link with the power of the universe, which our ancestors grew in etheric form 24 billion years ago. And before that, 76 trillion years ago, as we mentioned, as Baba has mentioned over the years, and how to link with those forces in nature. Nobody has taught us about that. They're still using words like Allah, God, Yahweh, Adonai. They're still using words that don't even vibrate, don't even come up to the vibration you need in order to link with beings that are our ancestors who exist in other dimensions to come and assist and help us to leave this plane. So, having said that, uh, if anybody just sit and just ponder right now, do you know what it literally takes to go from here and to crush your body down to energy? Do people realize what type of mental state you have to be in? That's why Baba was saying that you got to go back to zero time.
Right.
You got to go back to when you were at zero time reference. That means that zero time reference. I meant to bring this up on a clubhouse class, one brother. I was going to ask, but it's very difficult to ask questions. But I said, well, it'll come up somehow. That zero time that we need is before. Now, Baba did a update explaining that the sisters did. If we everybody just go back and check out that update, how we existed in our ethereal form in the ethereal all before we became physical.
Right.
That's zero time. See, because time starts here. Everybody got to remember that. Baba said that Inky dealt with time when they started breeding with us. That's where time starts. When we started here, when we personified as flesh and blood gods and goddesses, that's when time started. When we became in the physical. Prior to that, we were in etheric form at zero time. So what the affirmation is doing, if just go and check it, is resetting your clock back to zero time. That means what? You're not bothered by it's like a pendulum. And it's almost like the scale of Ma'at. The scale is not heavy because you got the heart on it and you have the feather on it. That scale must be equally balanced. That's what that balancement represent. That means you're in the middle holding the pendulum. Now you're the observer. You're holding time in your hand. You're holding the opposites, the existence of opposites. You're no longer existing by way of opposites. You're existing now as the ethereal all now. And that's why the all is we are. Once we get to that threshold, then we'll be beyond time, which give us the ability to travel into other dimensions and incarnate into other dimensions and come back. But we got to be obviously taught that, which was the master teacher said they would do. They would teach us how to do that. We don't know how to do it right now. We're just trying to make the mental link first. Right. Once we have that mental link, the body, the DNA will start to structure in a way where they will teach us the rest. They might need a machine to align us a certain way for your cells to be able to break up to be just a ball of energy. Our soul only weighs 24 grams. People got to remember this. Baba said our soul only weighs 24 grams. So we obviously have to learn how to be microscopic as well as macroscopic, and that's that whirlpool, that ripple effect that Baba talks about so many times about you becoming all expanding. You're able to, you're not identified with anything at that point. There's no reference point at that point in time, because you have the ability to link wherever the Nathar will guide us to be able to link to, will Baba be able to guide us to link to. Then we'll know what to do when we get to the next stage. We always need a guide. That's what people don't understand. You can't just be going into outer space and astral projection yourself out there because you don't know where you're going. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what to say. You don't even know the tones right. You don't know if your body is in the right tone yet. That's how we need Baba's help in that. And that's why he has to be free in order for that to happen. More or less, it has to happen. He has to be out in order for that to happen. So sorry about the long drawn out.
No, that's good. It's right on time. Yeah. With our timeline, I want to thank you. This was, I think it was phenomenal. We went through a lot of questions, so we went through a lot, and I hope that those who listen to this, will be edified by these discussions. It's necessary. We need brothers like yourself that is sharing and giving your points of view, on your journey, how you have developed to your level of wisdom, everyone knows. And it's needed, and so we're going to continue these discussions because we're at war, man. We got to liberate ourselves, and it's knowledge is going to do it. We need the right knowledge to liberate us, and so
absolutely. And that's everybody that's in the chat. I appreciate just people wanting to hear messages like this, as well as other messages that you brought on the channel to stimulate the minds of Nagato people, because they don't realize what they're getting from this type of channel is a plethora of information and information that they could ask questions on. And it's interesting because if everybody think, well, and I'm not knocking the brother, but let's just say Phil Valentine. I've heard about this brother for many years, Bobby Hemmett. I just never went that way. It just never connected me, obviously, by the way Baba did in explaining things. But when you start talking about quantum physics, you start talking about the things that you just mentioned about the shams and the pickups. That is a level of information that a lot of people can't imagine right now, because it's in fairyland. It's like in fairy tale land, because they watch TV and they see too many of these movies thinking that this is not real, this is not possible. Then okay, well, if it's not possible, well, how do we think of it? Why are we able to think of this stuff? If why is it able to exist if it's not real? So it has to be in some tangible universe somewhere, if not this one, which obviously the many sightings have explained that these crafts are real. So to try to explain to somebody, well, how do you know the craft? Let's first see if the crafts exist. Okay, well, there's tons of government documents that they have some of these crafts. So now what? They have interdimensional crafts that can go beyond space-time. What they can't figure out is how you can be in the craft and you be able to move at the speed of light like the craft. That's what they can't figure out. Baba mentioned that in the scroll. He explained that they missed the etheric aspect of your being inside of a vehicle like that, and how that etheric you has to be in alignment with that craft itself, the energy and the vibration that craft will need in order to speed up into the hyper dimension in order to travel. That Baba talks about bending space-time. Right. You can't bend space-time in physical as a physical material body. You can't bend space-time like that. That's why your mind has to link up with it first. Then you can physically link up with the craft. Why? Because you won't have, remember in the dimensional shift, I'm going to say this real quick. In dimensional shift, is that the only thing that can keep you here is you. Our emotions, our what do you call it? Our emotions, our diet, just the things that we don't think is important. Oh man, you mean what I eat is going to affect it? Yeah. Because if you have metal from animal flesh and chemicals that's in you that you've been eating because of animal flesh, that's going to be a problem. Not only that, the animal DNA. Your Natharu, our Pa Natharu, they didn't have animal DNA inside of their bodies at that time. They weren't eating animal flesh, you see? So they were herbivores. So once we go back to that, now you start to link up with the vibration, with the mind of the beings that are our ancestors, who even created the grays, who built the crafts that can move in hyperspace. But we have to be able to transform in order for that to happen. You can't transform there thinking about honey buns, thinking about, you know what I'm saying? Thinking about, man, I haven't had any sex today. I got, once you're trapped in person, place, and things, you're going to have a problem leaving person, place, and things into the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and eventually, hopefully, the 8th, 9th dimension. Right. That's where Yanun comes from. So I'll just say that just to get people to think, man, because sometimes people thinking like, oh yeah, we're going to be floating. You definitely have to have a shook. That's one of the main, that's the fuel. Now, I didn't want to say this, but that is the fuel that we'll need. That ashuk that we get from Panatharu, that's the fuel that's going to be able to get your body from your etheric body from here to where they are. Not, oh man, you still got hangups, you still got issues with brothers and sisters. That's what they don't understand, that love and unity is the power. That's a power in that once it's achieved, you'll be able to break time. You'll be able to break the laws of gravity. Right. I'll leave it at that.
No, that's great. That's great. Great. I appreciate you. This was a great build, and I hope everyone enjoyed this. And we're just getting started. We have more to come. We have more to come. But thank you, my brother Khufu. This is wonderful.
Anytime.
This is wonderful. Until then, guys, family, we're gonna sign out,
Mhm.
and obviously you guys are gonna see us next week. I'll be here, and we're gonna be talking, and we're gonna keep this discussion going. And we wish everybody love. We wish you love, my brother Kufu,
Same here.
and be strong. Until then,
Mm.
why do Muisar?
Why do
Why
more
do?
sauce?